You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talks on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talks One-on-One with Keith Engle. Great to have you all with me today. My guest I'll bring in a second, Wesley Walker, former standout wide receiver with the Jets from, I want to say, 77 to 89, or I'm sorry, 89-ish, I think. We'll talk to Wesley to get my numbers right, but we'll have him in a second. I want to welcome everybody watching this morning on our Facebook feeds, my TGI Sports Talk feed, my personal feed. We're on X. Or Twitter, if you're old and you don't want to change what you call it, like I am. We're live on National Streaming Sports Roku channel, as always. We appreciate that. Get that channel downloaded. Lots of great content there. Lots of great content. All the groups that allow me to share this content, you know, we sometimes, it's hit or miss sometimes with the live attendance. Often it's really good, but later on, that's where we drive the 3,000-4,000 views, and the groups are very instrumental in that. John Gonzalez at the Sports Authorities, Flo and the gang over at Bottom Line Sports. Let's Talk Sports, where Flo and the gang do their podcasting. Great content over there as well. Ken Krause from Golf Buds, Sports of All Sorts. Ralph Williams, RW Media. Ralph does some great stuff out of Pittsburgh, specifically the Sports Corner, Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. I've been a guest there and always have a good time with Ralph. DDH, thumbs up to you. Hope you're still watching over us. I know you are. I can feel it. And a quick thank you to Billy Sample, who was my guest last week. I know my guest today, Wesley, and Billy have crossed paths from time to time in New York. And next week, my guest will be Jim Graziano, former standout at South Carolina in basketball under Dick McGuire. My guest today, as I said, Wesley Walker, standout wide receiver at Cal in college, drafted by the Jets in 1977, I want to say. Standout there for many years. He was an All-Pro. He was a Pro Bowler, led the league in receiving and at least one season, maybe more. I know he was part of the all-rookie team. He's in the Ring of Honor with the Jets, and lots to talk about with Wesley, and I can't wait to do it. Welcome, Wesley Walker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Keith. Nice to be here with you this morning.
It's great to be here with you, and I always appreciate when you guys make time for me, especially when you're out west, when you're 2 hours behind me, and, you know, I know 7 o'clock's not early for everybody, but some people it is, so... Actually, 9 o'clock is early for some people these days.
I'm up at 3, 4, could be 2 in the morning. I walk every day as I'm getting older. You know, I'm not that I'm worried about passing away, but as you get older, you just realize we've been on this earth for a short time, and you only have so much time. Yeah. So I'm going to enjoy it while I can. So I can't run anymore due to injuries, but I can walk. So I'm up early in the morning, 3 or 4 in the morning every day, and I try to get in 3 miles. It's about an hour and 10 minutes a day, so it's good for me. So I appreciate life.
When you think about it, you're right. I mean, sleeping is I know it's important, but it's a waste of time. You're going to spend a third of your life sleeping. It seems crazy, right?
Yep. I was watching. I can't think of his name. But he was talking about the fact he gets things done. He's got a radio show. He does TV. He's got all these multitude of things he does, and you can sleep your life away. So the way I look at life, period, you know, we don't have that much time, so you should make the best out of it. A lot of people get up in the morning, they're miserable, they got to go to work, you know. I'm thankful that I'm even getting up in the morning and I can appreciate walking. I look at the stars out here, the landscape, and it's just a pleasure just to be alive and to start your day to try to make something out of it, because we don't have that much time. So you want to try to put value into the time that you do have and make it productive. That's what I try to do anyway.
Great point and great life lesson for people if you're listening. Anybody who's at the beginning of their life, even if you're later in life. It's so
You just don't think about that when you're younger, you know. And
No.
I remember talking to my father when he was 30. Dad, you know, you're getting old, you know, and here I'm going to be, if I make it this May, I'll be 70. And it's just gone in a blink of an eye. I look at my
It is.
kids, they're all older, they have kids, and the time and you don't see them, you know, it just goes by. So you got to really enjoy yourself and take the time out. And I just hope that people can sit back and smell the roses and appreciate family, the things that you have. And we're very blessed. There's a lot of people that have a lot of issues, and I have issues myself, but there's always things that are out there that are much, much worse. So you have to appreciate the things that you do have and just try to be, like I said, productive and be thankful for what you do have and try to influence others to just be positive all the time.
Tremendous message as we get started in this interview. Thank you. Wesley, let's get when you were growing up, you grew up in California.
Yes.
San Bernardino, if I'm right. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and out there, and what was your early formative years like out in California?
Well, it's funny, and you're right. I was born and raised in San Bernardino, and I was very fortunate. My dad was in the service, and so we had an opportunity to travel. And when I was growing up, I probably just growing up in a minority community, you know, and not a very, I would say, like below middle class type of thing. Like we didn't want for anything. We were just an average family. We weren't rich, but we found a way to get by. And I was very thankful that my dad was in the service, and we had the opportunity to even get out of that situation where you're in a community where it's not really a thriving community. And I hate to say, I don't know how to really explain it, where when you grew up where you seen poverty, you know. And back then, and I went back just recently when this is about 2 years ago. My mom was she was having some ailments, and she ended up passing away. And I was spent 2 weeks with her during that time. And I went back to my old house where we used to live, and everything is like huge when you're growing up, and we didn't have very much. And it was only like we lived with our grandparents a lot when my dad would go get stationed elsewhere, and we'd have to wait to go see him. But I went back to our old house, and we're in this house, and it's only like 2 bedrooms, but we had fun. We played together. We were a family, and everything seems so much bigger. But when you go back and look at it now, I even went back just recently. I had this Hall of Fame high school thing this year. I just went a couple of weeks ago to go to a couple of places where I used to live, and everything seems so much bigger. But you look at it, it's so small, but you just appreciated things that you had during that time. And so my father, because of the service, we had an opportunity to go to Europe. We lived there. I lived in Germany for 4.5 years. We traveled all over the United States, getting transferred to different places. And I used to look at going to different schools, because I probably went to 13, 15 different schools and never settled into one school until I got to high school.
Wow.
And it was very difficult for me, and I was very shy. But when I look back on those experiences, meeting different people and getting exposure, it was really a good exposure for me to make me the man that I am today, just getting exposed to a lot of different things. And one of the things growing up, you know, I experienced a lot of prejudice and racism. And growing up. And then when I went over to Europe and other places, and I still never could understand it, being from a minority community, and I probably went to more predominantly like white schools, but I never saw color or issues. And I know I used to hear these stories from my mom being down south. She grew up in Arkansas, and used to hear all these different stories. And you know, and during the civil rights movement, because I was born in 55, in the 60s, you see the
Right.
plight of what people had to go through, and not having that true experience. I don't know how I could have survived that. But I just never, as a minority, as a black person in this country, and I still experience racism and the things that you've seen, and even with my teammates and whatnot, you just don't understand how things are like that. But growing up and having these experiences made me a better person, and you understand certain things. But I just never understood how people could not love each other or like each other because you were different. And the point I'm making, I grew up in a minority community, but when we went off to different schools, I probably, like I said, went to predominantly white schools, but I never saw any differences with anything. I've always had love for people, and I still to this day can't understand how we all just don't get along and can't love each other. And that's one of the things growing up.
It's a great point. And I want to ask you this question on that, and not to belabor the race question, but it's important. It's still important in this country, obviously. Growing up and seeing those things, right, and not understanding necessarily, and the way your mom might have grown up in the South, and maybe neither is worse. I'm going to say which is worse. Maybe there is nothing worse. Is overt racism worse than covert racism? What are your thoughts about?
I think it's sort of on the equal side, because I just feel like even now, it still exists. It's just maybe hidden a lot more. Some of it's even coming out to light because of the political climate. And it was really extreme in the past. But if you think about it, from the beginning of time, since the beginning of the world with the conflicts, it's always been there. Yeah. I just have a hard time because of my faith in God and how he created all of us. And it's supposed to be equal. You're supposed to love one another. And I do not understand how it cannot be that way. And like, I have every right to maybe be prejudiced or watching my mom or listen to the stories and being brought up a certain way. And I'm sure people have been brought up a certain way to hate or whatever it may be. But I just don't have that in my being. And I don't care what people say about one another. I don't judge anyone because of things that have happened in the past. I just don't understand it. And I've had to deal with it from a youngster, just dating out of my race as a youngster. I had a girlfriend in college that I dated since I was a freshman when I got to the pros. And I remember seeing her parents on campus at Cal, where I went to school, and I wasn't even allowed to meet them or whatever, But you dealt with stuff like that. And it's not only that situation, a lot of situations, but not everybody's like that. But I just had a hard time understanding. I still have a hard time understanding the whole plight, what's going on in this political climate. But it's been like this since the beginning of time. I just have to focus on being the type of person that God wants me to be, that you're supposed to be. And that's being honest and truthful. And just being loving and caring, and there's this quote I use, and I'm a big fan of Denzel Washington, and one of his movies, The Equalizer, and there's a quote in there by Mark Twain. It says the two most important days in your life is when you're born and when you find out why. And I've had a struggle, and I asked God, what am I on this earth to do? And really, in all the things that I've gone through, playing in the NFL, I became a teacher after that. Yeah. And I finally realized I'm here to serve others. And as a faithful person, that's what you do. And I love people. I love what I do. I love my family. I just have this in my heart. I just wish everybody had this as a being in their hearts, and we'd have a better place. I just never understood why it's like that. And I remember my father telling me, you're never going to change anything in your lifetime. And now I get it. But I remember saying, Dad, well, I'm changing things, and I'm still going to speak up when it's warranted. I know my wife gets mad. Don't watch what you say, this, that. But I can't be silent about certain things that are truthful or hurtful. But in this society, the way things are, I still have a question and not understanding why it's like that.
Yeah. Well, you approach her from a fairly positive direction, so that helps some as well, right? So, getting back to your younger years, you go to Carson High School. You're a standout football player. Did you play other sports?
Yes, I played basketball, and one of the things about when you play other sports, I don't know. Sometimes there's competition within coachings with other sports. I remember even when I got to the pros. And we have this defensive coordinator, Joe Gardy, who went to Hofstra to coach, and they had a good lacrosse program and a great football program, but there was a competition between the two. I've always had a problem with coaches when I ran track, and when you do other sports, they really wanted me to come out for spring ball. And I remember one of the coaches that we had who just got honored in this high school Hall of Fame just recently. I just went out to the coach. He really kind of didn't like the football players coming out. So there's a kind of a risk, but I loved all sports. And the funny thing about me, I don't really watch sports. I try to follow as much as I can with the Jets. And, I do podcasts, so you got to stay in the loop. But I've never watched college football. I don't even know what my alma mater does record wise. Yeah. I always like playing it, but I'm not a good spectator. My mind, I just can't focus. My mindset is not there to be sitting in the stands and watching unless it's my kids or something like that. And I always said I'm not into sports, but I love playing the sport. But I love playing baseball. I thought I was going to be a pro baseball player. I was a big Willie Mays fan growing up, and I scared my mom to death because a lot of people don't know I grew up and I was born blind in my left eye. And at the time, and this is funny, it makes me think about my father being in the service. And I remember we were in, I think it was in Washington on one of the bases we were stationed. And he's playing catch with me. And he noticed my eye drifting off, and so he thought it was a muscle that had to be tightened up or something. And we go to a couple of specialists and they find out that I had it's a weird kind of cataract on the inside of the eye. And they thought maybe when the eye developed when I was 14, when it's fully developed, they could do surgery or something. But we went to a specialist and they really didn't know. And there wasn't a guarantee that if they did some type of surgery that I would get full complete vision. I may have to wear these special bifocal like glasses. And so we just never did anything about it. But I know my mom was scared to death because I got hit in the eye one time. And I never thought about this too. Wonder if something happened to my good eye, I'd be totally blind. And getting back to what I do with families and giving back, we work with a blind couple and we have their 7 and 8-year-old daughters who have problems with their eyes too. But I can't imagine growing up in this world, raising children, having to work, and you're totally blind. So I can kind of relate to that situation, But I love playing sports. I loved all sports. I never thought about playing football. I just happened to go out in high school on a whim. My coaches in junior high school, middle school, thought so highly of me. They wanted the two local high schools, which was Banning and Carson, to come see me playing this flag football game. And matter of fact, one of my teammates, Freeman McNeil, went to Banning High School, my rival. And I had a quarterback in college, and I had some great quarterbacks in college. But one of my rivals was Vince Ferragamo, who got drafted by the Rams, #1. Yeah. His brother was the coach at Banning. And I remember they came out to watch me play in this flag football game, and I dropped this ball. And my dad was on the sidelines with both the coaches. And one of the coaches, which was Vince Ferragamo's brother, who was the head coach, said, "Oh, send him to Carson," after he made like a snide comment. And Gene Vogan, the head coach of Carson, introduced him, my father, to him. And my dad told me this little story. So I opted to go to Carson because of that comment. And all, Carson was relatively new, and it was a better school. And Banning was really in a minority community. It wasn't like a great atmosphere for what I wanted. But I made the right choice. I never lost a game in high school. I had a coach who believed in me, who saw something in me, and that makes all the difference in the world for an athlete. And he really just turned my life around and put me on the map, And there's only two coaches that I consider who brought me to another level, which is what a coach does, a good coach does. And that was my high school coach, Gene Vogan, and a guy we had, he was our wide receivers coach, Dan Henning, who went on to other teams. And
Dan Henning,
just an awesome coach. And he put me at another level that I can't even, I've had a lot of great coaches, a lot of good coaches, but and a lot of technicians. And these are things that you work on. You just do, even as an individual, you work on things. But a coach who can teach you certain things to make you better or to elevate your play, that's a real coach. Dan Henning was one of those guys. And I'm proud to say that I just had a conversation with him recently. I'm writing a book with Gary Kaschek, who and I got him through. We met through Ed Cranepole, who
Yeah.
just recently passed away, who's a good
Yeah.
friend of mine.
Yeah.
And it's ironic he passed away, and Gary took it to his publishers, and they wanted to do this book. So it's going to come out September 23rd for the next football season, 2025. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's the same guy who did Ed Cranepole's
Yes,
I read
absolutely.
the book. It was really
Absolutely,
good.
yes.
It was a really good book.
And we were, and since he's on the East Coast and I'm here, I mean, I'm up at 2 and 3 in the morning, just having a conversation. And you say with your wife, when you're running a show, you spend more time doing that. The wives are under pressure too. Like, what are you doing? Can you take another time to do this stuff? You're just 24/7, but we have no choice with the time difference. But It's been fun. It's been fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Dan Henning, by the way, coached on pretty much every level. I mean, he coached, and he was a great coach, Dan Henning.
Yeah, he was like a father to me.
Yeah.
There's just certain people that see things, just the relationship you have, and they're not totally, to say, by the book with things. They understand the whole philosophy, even just with life, on how to treat people. But it's not like that with every coach, and that's what's very special about it. As a matter of fact, when we were writing a book, and he's doing one of the four, it's Richard Todd is doing one, Matt Robinson, and I appreciate some of the guys that who've been there for me to kind of speak out. But he was telling me some stories of myself that I didn't even realize. And because of my blindness, I remember he said he was high during when the draft came up. I was drafted in '77. He was high on Stanley Morgan, who's a great, outstanding receiver for the New England Patriots. He ends up getting drafted, and they were on Stanley was on their board, and he was disappointed. And so we had this general manager, Mike Hollenbeck. He said, "I got this guy for you. Nobody really knows too much about him." Wesley Walker, meaning myself, and when I did get drafted, and I was supposed to be a first round draft choice. I was really disappointed because I hurt my knee my senior year. I mean, I'm having this stellar game. I had like almost 300 yards. I think it was against San Jose. And all the scouts, I'm going to be a number one draft choice. And my coaches wanted to know what bowls I'm going to play in. And you don't count your chickens before they hatch. I've learned that lesson. And we go against USC. And I wasn't even supposed to play. And my backup, because I was hurt, and I went in anyway because my backup wasn't doing his job. And I went up after a bad ball, and I ended up coming down, planted foot. And Dennis Thurman hit me on the knee and tore my knee up. I was out for the season. Yeah. And I never thought about getting hurt. I never felt I was invincible. And you hear all these stories of people getting knee surgeries and whatnot, getting knocked out. But you don't think about that happening to me. And lo and behold, it happened my senior year. So I didn't know if I was going to be able to play again. I didn't know if I would be recovering from it. And that's why I really love running track, because track got me back into really where I needed to be speed-wise and working around the cardiovascular, being in shape for football. Yeah. And I remember I was excited. I was still supposed to be a number one draft choice, but it scared a lot of teams, and I ended up going in the second round. But Dan told me when they brought me in, we came in for a mini camp because he worked me out before with Richard Todd and I think Pat Ryan. And when they didn't really want to sign me because I came in, I had a loose, a bad knee. So that was a concern. And they also drafted a Marvin Powell, who was a great friend of mine, who was my best man. And he's passed away now too. Great all-time, great 5-time All-Pro tackle, the best I've ever seen.
You went to USC, right?
Went to USC, and he had loose knees. So when we came in for the physical, and they found out he had loose knees. So I had this bad knee they were concerned about because they sent a trainer out to look at me, Bob Reese. I remember seeing him. They had no idea I was blind until I had to read the eye chart. So Leon Hess was livid. You just drafted a guy, number one draft choice, this tackle with loose knees, and this receiver, not only with a bad knee, and he's blind. And so he didn't want to even sign me. And Dan Henning just told me this, and they were, like I said, high on Stanley Morgan. Stanley Morgan came off the board. I was available, and then Mike Hollenbeck thought I was like a steal. And matter of fact, when the draft came, I get the phone call. Everybody's calling me. Everybody, my mother. If I'm drafted, I would let you know. If you don't get the call in the morning, you're not drafted. So I was disappointed.
Right.
So New Orleans calls me and saying they're just starting the second round. They were going to draft me, and I was excited about it because Chuck Muncie, who I went to school with, had just gotten drafted by them previous year, and it probably would have been a detriment because he's a big partier, and I liked him. I idolized them. Would have been two bad boys together, so that probably wouldn't have worked. But so I get the call. I'm thinking it's New Orleans, and it's the New York Jets, and it was Connie Carberg, who I'm very friends with her now. Her dad was our team orthopedic doctor. He ran the show, and then her dad was our physical family doctor and whatnot too. But go ahead.
She was like one of the first female scouts.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're still friends. She's a diehard Jet fan, very knowledgeable. She knows more about it. Sometimes I would call her to get information, but she's a wonderful, wonderful person. But Dan Henney told me, like, Leon Hess did not want to sign me. And he said, you got to see this kid. I just worked him out. He's catching everything. I don't care if he's blind or not because he can see everything. He's catching everything. And when I did go through the minicamp, they signed me right away. But that's how the combines got started. Leon Hess started flying in guys early to do pre-physicals, and it wasn't really cost effective. So I guess he went to the league, and they started bringing in guys early. And then they went to a couple of different places. Now, they're housing in Annapolis and everything else. And that's how the combines actually one of the reasons it got started. But I'm really excited that I've had good feedback from my teammates and people around the league. Just want to write my memoirs. There's certain things that are important to me. So I told Gary, I don't care about the money or the book. I just want to write a good story. Hopefully it's a good story and people will enjoy it for the Jet fans anyway.
We'll promote that book for you when it's out, so make sure you let us know.
Yes.
Guys, I see a lot of comments coming up, so I'll get to them. I don't want to get to things too far out of context, especially Locked In Sports Zone. Your question I'll certainly get to. I had to bring up, but it'll come up a little bit later, so stick around. Getting back to, going back a little bit in time, because you went ahead of time a little bit, but at your time at Cal, you played with Mike White was a coach. You had some really good talent there. The team wasn't necessarily, you had a couple of really good years, not winning the Pac-8 at the time, but you had a couple of good quarterbacks, as you alluded to earlier, and Steve Bartkowski. And
we had great quarterbacks. I mean, this Ferragamo, Steve Bartkowski. Yeah. We had a guy by the name of Joe Roth.
Great
player. He was likened to Joe Namath.
Yeah.
Just a great person. I ended up getting hurt my senior year. His cancer came back.
Yeah.
And it just, seeing this 21-year-old kid go through what he went through and had the whole world ahead of him. And that's why life is so fleeting and you have to take advantage of what is ahead of you. And I just can't tell you how good he was. And I just wish he was here today. And Kenny O'Brien reminds me of him too, Yeah. And I had a guy, Kenny O'Brien, who never got the accolades, but I just had some wonderful, wonderful people around me. And we had some great athletes. I mean, you think of Chuck Muncie. We had a phenomenal team. And as a freshman, I thought we were going to be world beaters, and we were going in to play Alabama. And I'm thinking we're going to beat them. I'm only a freshman. We're going to beat them, and we got beat 66-0. I'll never forget that.
Oh, geez.
But you develop things when you get older and more mature. And we had 1 year, my junior year, and it was so disappointing. We ended up tying with, I think, UCLA, and they had beaten us, and we had beaten SC. But we had the same record, and because they had beaten us, they went to the Rose Bowl instead. We had the same identical record. And the fact that we didn't go to a Rose Bowl game, we led the league, the whole league, the nation, in rushing and passing. And how do you not get a bowl bid? But now with the politics of the money and everything, it is so different now. I came along at the wrong time, I'll tell you now, because I don't understand this whole portal thing. They're getting paid right now, so it's crazy. It is crazy.
It's hard to look back. I mean, I want to go back to Joe Roth in a second, but since you brought up NIL, I mean, do you think all of that team would have stayed together or moved on? I mean, it's hard to go look back in time, but
I don't think, it's just even now, if you look at the NFL, with the free agency. Nothing stays the same. And this is, I don't even understand. I didn't even know until 2 years ago with a buddy of mine, one of my teammates at Dallas Hickman, who I went to school with. He lives out here in Arizona. Big fan, follows Cal, and he knows about sports. And I was even asking him, I never knew anything about these portals and transferring and just the money, just different things happen. It's just so different now. And I think it's just so hard as even a coach to try to keep abreast of trying to get players, trying to keep them, trying to deal with different personalities. I don't know how you develop that. And on a pro level, you have the same sort of thing, and with free agency and different coaches coming in and trying to surround yourself, ownership. There's so many things that go into trying to develop a winner. It's just very difficult. I couldn't do it myself as a coach, but I don't know and how it would have been. But I think in this time and age, we would lose players, and it would just be so different.
Well, Wesley Walker would have made a lot more money before he actually even got to
the Well, the thing is with that even, and I was listening to Charles Barkley, I think it was last year, how he thinks it's been a detriment. But you play this game, and it's so fleeting, you could get hurt just like that.
Yeah.
And you're done. And you have to prepare for your future and think about those things. Especially as a youngster, you don't think about those things. But my mind said, hey, I want to have a future. I got to think about if I don't make it, if I get hurt. And you have to figure out those things. So in college, they're making a tremendous amount of money off these athletes. So I would liken it to why not the players get what they really deserve and need and to get paid to take care of their futures, but you don't know. I mean, I know obviously a lot of guys want to get to the pros, but it's just so hard to get there. You don't know. So if you're in college and you can provide yourself with income and or financially for your future, even for your families, there is nothing wrong with that. And I would have welcomed coming in during this time to try to figure that all out. And even if you have the mindset to try to figure things out, there's still guys with I don't care how much money you make, it still can be squandered, and that's the thing. You got to be smart about it. But the bottom line, you need to set yourself up for life after any sport. And that's the main thing. And a lot of people just take that for granted. And it's not so hard to do sometimes if you don't have the mindset to keep that in the back of your mind and try to focus on what you need to do or create a strategy so you can be successful. Forget about being successful during the time you're playing. There's more to life after that. So that's even more of a concern for me with my family and everything else.
Great point. And before we move on to your Jets and how you moved on after football, which is important, we'll get to that later. I want to go back a little bit and talk a little about Joe Roth. I mean, I've read stories. I don't know I don't know if it's 100% true or not, that he knew that he was dying when he played that last season. And do you think,
yes. Yeah.
Did you guys all know that?
Well,
too?
the thing is, we used to, like, even our junior year, I just had this nice relationship. And I always tell Kenny O'Brien, he reminds me of that type of person. He was very soft-spoken, very quiet. I remember he had this scar below his ear, and we were talking about when he had the cancer previously. And the type of cancer that he had, I remember him telling me, it could come back in your fourth year or so, and it ended up coming back. Yeah. And so when they did find it, there were some things that were going on, and they really didn't know at the time how bad it really was until he got checked up, but you knew something was going on. And he went through that whole season as best he could, and he didn't complain about it. And one of the I have a lot of blemishes in my life and things that I've had to deal with. And one of the things that I wish I had a do-over, I wasn't, I would say, scared of like death or whatever, but you didn't want to see people suffering or they're because with cancer, it changes you and you can change from a physical. And it just makes you hurt. And right now I deal with people all the time in hospice. And that's one of the things. And I have a friend I got a call today that's going through, he's in the stage 4 cancer. And that's when I feel like I can't be there for them. I wish I could take it away. I don't know what to say. You want to be there to make them feel better, change things. And to watch Joe go through what he went through, the kind of classy gentleman that he was, and they were talking about amputating his legs, and I couldn't see him like that. I wouldn't want to see him like that. But I remember seeing a friend of mine who couldn't speak, and his wife didn't want us to come see him. And I remember we went to go see him, my wife and I at the time, and he perked up. He couldn't talk, but he was glad I was there.
Yeah.
And I so wish that I would have went to see Joe, because I was afraid, just afraid of death. Didn't want to see him like that, and I didn't even know what to say. And plus, I was kind of estranged from the team because I'd gotten hurt, so I wasn't with the team. I'm trying to rehab, so I was away from everything. So we lost that separation. But I felt bad that I never went to see him in the hospital just to tell him how I felt about him, because he was just such a good, smart, just I can't even describe, just a loving, and it just makes me want to cry, because how did this happen to this type of person?
Yeah.
And that's why life is so fleeting. Doesn't matter how good you are, the things you've done, it can affect you, anyone at any time. And I just wish I could have been there to try to help him in any way I could. And that's one of my regrets. So now I've learned how to deal with certain things, because my wife started a company where we take care of the elderly. I've had to go through hospice, and you watch people dying, and even the people that we care for right now, and watch their family, or somebody happens with cancer, and you're there for them. And it's very hard, but it's taught me how to deal with things, and gives me another perspective, and where I want to help people in any way that I can. So it's taught me. But like I said, one of the regrets, I just wanted to see him and be there just to tell him how you feel. And I watched my mom go through her struggle where she couldn't even communicate with you. And the only last comment I had from her was she was asking me where my wife was. And that's the last thing where she could talk. But my last 2 weeks I was with her, she couldn't talk or anything else. And you're watching them just frailing back and forth, and they're going to die. And you want them to pass on, because you feel like they're suffering.
Yeah.
But one thing I do know, I just want to be there for people in a time of need. And I just wish I would have been there for Joe at that particular time.
Well, you're giving back now and making amends, I guess, in your own way. And that's a good thing. And it's a sad situation. I remember Joe Roth when I'm a little bit younger than you, not a lot, 4 years younger, but still enough. And I remember that story and what a good player he was. So
yeah, and I would recommend, if you go on the internet and you look up the Joe Roth story, and you'll see a whole story, and Tony Dungy's in it. And I remember at the time they wanted to do a movie, and the mom was really distraught about it at the time. And I understand, because there were certain things where at the time you're going through this, just like me, I couldn't see him like that. But then you think about it, I'm sure because he was such a great person, his story should have been told. And you think about some of the things, maybe you should have done this, you should have done that. And you don't think about it till after somebody's gone or certain things have happened. But you're so into the moment of grieving, you don't understand certain things. But his story should be told, and just to the world, and it's just not only about him, it's just about just the perseverance, and just the type of person he was that makes you want to be better, and that's just the type of guy. And he was just so soft-spoken, and I swear, Kenny O'Brien was this guy who didn't get the attention or the accolades he really deserves, and got beat down here in New York. But he had that same personality. And when I look at Kenny O'Brien, I think of Joe Roth all the time. But I've been very thankful. I had Vince Ferragamo as quarterbacks. I had Steve Bartkowski. And Steve Bartkowski is one of the best. I mean, you're talking about some stellar quarterbacks. And Joe Roth was surpassed all their records, So you just don't know what could have been. And there's so many great athletes out there. And that's why I said there's no one great. There's so many different athletes out there. They all bring something to the table, but we're all great in our own way.
Yeah, good stuff. You've already covered a little bit about, how you got to the Jets and not being a first-round draft pick, being a second-round draft pick, and some of the logistics there. You get to New York. My first question, I guess, is growing up in California, playing college in California, and moving to New York City. Is there a culture shock there? What was that like for you?
Not for me, because I was used to traveling. So you just deal with the climate or the elements or whatever comes your way. And the only thing I was thinking about, man, how cold did it get there? Because I don't like cold weather. Because when I got drafted, I was hoping I would go to a California team. Even when I got recruited to every major university, and I went out to Nebraska and Colorado and some of these cold places, and I really had no idea that where I was going to go, but I sure didn't want to be in cold weather. That's for sure. But that was the first thing I thought about. But then you think about the media capital of the world and being in New York. If you win, how exciting that would be. And I appreciate New York more so now that I'm away from it, and being there, even just being there, going to the city. I very rarely even went to the city. And there's so much to do. There's so many things that I wasn't aware of. And I had so much fun. I had just as much fun being on Long Island that I did going to the city. I would go to the city and I'm looking to have fun and go to the clubs. I'm like, where's this place that never sleeps? I could not find it. I'd go to Long Island and I'd have my places I could go. But the thing is, I just didn't know where to go. And it's there.
Yeah.
And I still have our son is still in Long Island. So I get back to New York. I got 3 kids in New Jersey. I love going to plays. When I was married in New York, I very rarely went to the city, never went to plays. And it's not till after I've retired where I can appreciate and do the things going in like during the Christmas time. And it's hectic during Christmas time with the tree lighting and people. And it's like crazy. But I do love the atmosphere and the things that you can do being in New York. And it's just nice. And I love when I get a chance to go back for our Legends weekends with the Jets. And that's a part of me that I feel like, even though I'm from California, I feel like I'm a New Yorker, or at least a Long Island New Yorker, and I do miss that. But here I'm in Arizona, and I just adapt to whatever is presented with me. And you look at the fact that I go from California coming to New York. Hey, I just welcomed anything. I went to Berkeley, and that was a melting pot of everything. I was like a black hippie, so I accepted everyone for who they were, what they were, and me. I didn't give a crap about anybody, what they thought. This fit me, and I was happy to be in New York, hopefully fitting that same mold. But now I'm out in Arizona where it gets really, really hot. It's cold now. The temperatures are really cool, but it's like night and day opposed to Arizona and New York. But I just adapt anywhere I go. But I truly, truly love the New York Jets. I love Long Island. I just wish things would have been a lot better. Things don't go the way you want, but that's just life. And you just learn from I guess your journey and perspective, and hopefully you develop yourself where you just learn by your mistakes or your problems, and you get better as a person.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that time in New York. You came into a team that was kind of transitioning from the Namath era to, and you talked about Kenny O'Brien having a tough time maybe in New York.
Yeah,
he had a tougher time than the guy you mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
Rich Todd. I mean,
they both really had a tough time because when you don't win. I remember seeing signs, Todd is God, but when you go down the wrong path, you're losing. Man, those fans and people come out. It's what have you done for me lately? I've been there, and things do change, but it's tough to be in New York. But people don't understand the business part of it. It takes a lot. It's not only your play, but you have to have the coaching. You have to have the systems. You have to have the opportunities. There's a lot of things that have to take place. And you mentioned those guys, Richard Todd, Kenny O'Brien. I take probably every guy on our team. I can put them in a situation where they are stellar players. But it doesn't mean if you don't get those opportunities or you go to another team, will you get the same opportunities to develop that? A lot of players around this league. I mean, I think about a lot of players like Dan Marino. He's never even been to a Super Bowl. You know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't mean that you don't have that caliber of play. It's just being at the right place at the right time, getting the right system. I always people thought if we had drafted Dan Marino, we could have had him. Just because we would have drafted Dan Marino, give him the same circumstances, you don't know if he'd have been better than Richard Todd or Kenny O'Brien. You don't know Kenny O'Brien, if he was in another system, would flourish like that. But if you have the right opportunities, you can flourish as an athlete. And I am just disappointed with guys that I respected, like a Kenny O'Brien or Richard Todd. They just never got the accolades that they really deserve. that they really truly do, and they were great athletes. They could play with it. We could play with anybody, to be honest with you.
Would Richard Todd have been? He came in a year before you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Name was still there.
Yes.
And Lou Holtz was a coach. And Lou Holtz was a great college coach, but he was miscast in New York.
Happens when you come to the Jets.
Yeah. Would Richard Todd have been better off getting drafted maybe a year later and not playing at the same time that Namath was still on the roster?
No, I don't think so. I think, and I'd have to really talk to him personally, and I never really said anything to him, and I've been thinking about this since the book deal, and my wife has been booking him for appearances, and I want to talk a little bit more because I just found out his name is Carl, really, and this is something that I didn't even know about him.
His name is Carl.
Yeah, I have to get the whole story. I wish my wife was here to tell you the whole story. We just found that out now. But with Richard,
tell her we want him on TGI Sports Talk for an interview. So tell her.
Yeah, and you should get him on your show. He's a classy guy. I love him, and I never gave him the pride. And I told him this probably more respect for Kenny O'Brien. But Richard Todd put me on the map. I always felt Richard tried to fall in, Joe Namath's shoes. Yeah. And that's a hard shoes to really fill. Yeah. But you have to kind of have your own personality. And it's really about coaching, putting you in the right system, using your attributes. And I'm not so sure Richard Todd had all that, but he certainly could throw the ball. And I would put Richard Todd against anybody and people used to get mad at me. With Richard Todd and Kenny O'Brien, I would say, because I'm prejudiced, I'm my guys.
Yeah,
I would take them over Dan Marino, John Elway, and Joe Namath. And I love Joe Namath. I wish I would have had the opportunity to play with him. He is just one of the nicest. Since the day I met him, he is like family. He treats me with nothing but respect. Always just, I wouldn't say put me on this pedestal, but he's just a nice guy. And so I get angry with myself when I said that, even over Joe Namath, I take my guy, because these are the guys that I play with. But I get so much, I don't know if it's animosity. I just know what these guys brought to the table, how good they were, and they could compete with anybody. I saw Kenny O'Brien beat Dan Marino, John L. in the Superstars competition. But to say he's better or they're better, you can't compare the two. But they were all great athletes. And I just believe you just deserve the attention on an equal basis. And that's what Richard Todd and Kenny O'Brien didn't have. But I can toot their own horn. They were good as anybody that I've ever played with. They helped put me on the map. I don't care who you are. I always throw me the ball,
You're the best. You keep getting out in front of what I was going to ask you. That's perfect. Because I was good.
Well, the thing is, Matt Robinson, Richard Todd goes down. Matt Robinson comes in. I go to the Pro Bowl that year, and I wasn't like Keyshawn Johnson. Throw me the damn ball. I don't care who's throwing it. But I'll tell you what, I'll put my guys up against anybody. I mean, I look at a guy like Joe Glecko, MVP player. Bruce Harper, MVP player. People don't even know how good he really was. He led the league. He even was voted most valuable player, but he doesn't get the accolades. Even the Jets don't really promote him. I look at Abdul Salam. And I'm wearing an Abdul Salam hat, a T-shirt, because how is he not in the Ring of Honor? And people don't know what he brought to the table. But we had guys, Joe Glecko, Mark Gasson. I mean, I can go on and on and on. And it just bothers me. I know what we brought to the table. The public doesn't really know. But, hey, some people will get mad because they didn't get to the Hall of Fame. They'll take that to the grave. I can't be angry. I know we can play with anybody in the Hall of Fame, but that's me.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to the totality of that in a second. Go back to Todd for a second. And your first 4 years or whatever, the team struggled. 8-8 was your high mark. You had some bad years, but if Richard Todd was as bad as people want to portray him to be, how does Wesley Walker get to be, all rookie and lead?
There you go. Well, that just goes to show you. But when you don't win, you don't get the exposure, and I can tell you, you don't even get to the Pro Bowl. A lot of teams that have these superstars like San Francisco, they had them or Pro Bowl players at every position. And when you win, you get to the playoffs, you get more exposure, you get those accolades, and that's what happens.
Yes,
And sometimes we get lost as athletes because we didn't get the exposure. And a
Yeah.
guy like Bruce Harper, I'm just talking about, he led the league one time, but they gave Rick Upchurch, who was great in his own right. But here the guy led the league, he won, he should be in the Pro Bowl, but yet it was political and things like that happen. So you don't get recognized. And that's the problem that we all had. You cannot tell me a Joe Glecko, a Mark Gastineau, you said Richard Todd, Kenny O'Brien, given the opportunity, they could play with anybody. We
Yeah.
just had a bunch of guys that were just, I would say, underachievers that you can say, or just never got the exposure that they really deserve and didn't get the recognition. My biggest problem is just staying healthy.
Yeah, well, I was going to get to that in a little bit too. But in your first half of your career, after the years I just talked about, you did go 10-5. You get to the playoffs, lost a wild card game to I can't remember, in 81. Was it to the Bengals? I'm not sure. Might have been the Bengals.
I'm trying to think. I can't even remember that. The 10-5 one. I don't remember that.
But
I know the one where we went. God, I forgot the year where I thought we were going to go to the Super Bowl.
82.
Was that the 82 season?
82.
No, maybe it was the 86 season I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But the 82 season was a strike shortened season. But I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember who we got beat by,
Yeah, that's okay. But that year, and then in 82, you go 6-3. It's the strike season. But you go through the playoffs, you get to the AFC Championship game. And I wonder, Richard Todd had played really good football for those couple of years, but he has a really bad game in that AFC Championship game. And
but we all have bad games.
People remember that stuff, right?
Yeah, and I remember I think we had a chance to beat Buffalo in the playoffs, and he threw an interception. I dropped 2 passes that could have been potential touchdowns. We all have bad games, but that shouldn't warrant you to not to be recognized as a great player just because you had to win that game. What about the times, like I remember that you mentioned in 82 against the Bengals, against the Raiders, and Richard Todd had some stellar games. He just happened to have a bad game, that 5 interception game. Yeah. I only caught 1 pass in that game. I thought we were going to go to the Super Bowl. We had to plan to go to the Super Bowl as a team, as an organization, and we were going through all these different things. We had to plan as if we were going to the Super Bowl, and you had that. I didn't even know. Usually, I check the weather and everything. I didn't even know it was raining. I get up and I'm looking out the window. Oh my God, this is going to change everything. It was a monsoon. I could not believe it. I don't even know why I didn't even check the weather, but I was like shocked. But here we lose the game. I caught 1 pass at the end of the game, this little stop route. It aggravates me to this day. I remember going to that Super Bowl. I said I wasn't going to go to a Super Bowl ever unless we were in it. So I had 2 tickets. My ex-wife and I go to the game, and I see Jimmy Cephalo go against Washington, 70 yards for the third. And I'm looking at this slow receiver, go for this 70 yards. That should be me. I'm angry. I left the game, and then they got beat 44 or something. I forgot what it was. And I said I would never go to another Super Bowl. And it's just so frustrating. I mean, I think about the time where we Cleveland comes back to beat us for the championship, but we had some opportunities, but we just blew it. And we were in the driver's seat, but somehow we found a way. And it's got to be frustrating as an organization, as a team, and especially this year, the last 3 years, what the Jets are going through. It's like, when is this going to stop?
It goes back to 82. You said you didn't know it was even raining. Apparently, Don Shula didn't know it was raining either. That
was there's a lot of stories that came out of it. And to this day, I don't know if that was a ploy not to cover the field, which if it was me, I wouldn't have covered that damn field myself, to stop us. And that's the best thing they could have done. But I don't know the whole thing, the situation, but I know something happened with the organization with Walt Michaels getting fired. We come in with 1 game of being in the Super Bowl, they fire him. There was a lot of things that went on and that we weren't even privy to. There's a lot of stories. I'm sure Greg Buttle and Marty Lyons will tell you a whole different other story. To this day, I don't know what happened. All I know is we played a bad game. I didn't play a good game because I didn't get the opportunities because of the weather. Richard certainly had one of his worst games, but it didn't diminish what he brought to the team because we couldn't have been there without Richard Todd and a lot of things that happened. We just got on a roll. I mean, if you look at the two games, I mean, Freeman against the Bengals ran for 200 yards. He overshadowed me. I had 160, I think, and set up some good plays. Even the first play of the game on a big bomb and everything. And I got overshadowed by him, But we were on all cylinders. But it seems like we just would shoot ourselves in the foot at the wrong time.
So that answers your question about Shula and the Dolphins, by the way, because if they watch that game with Freeman going off and you going off, and I'm facing you two guys, guess what? I'm not covering the field either. I'm going to slow you down any way I can. I done the same thing. So I think Shula purposely let that field get the way he got it.
Well, that was the rumor. You'd have to talk to him, and you can't talk to him. I don't really know. But like I said, they have, I don't know what the rules are, even with covering or whatever, but that wowould be smart on his part.
Absolutely.
And as a coach and knowing the Jets, because I just remember as a rookie, we beat them 33-20. I had like 2 touchdowns. We always, for some reason, had good success against them. Yeah. And they were able to play a defense to stop us because of the flooding on the field and footing and everything else. They could play a defense where it made it hard for us to affect our passing game. But you do that as a leader, as a team, and as a coach. There's no way I would have covered the field. And coaches do that. I don't care what anybody teams backing with the Belichick with the spying. There's a lot of things that go on that wasn't even privy to. Whether it's Brady deflating balls. There's a lot of things that people do that I'm not even privy to that I didn't even know, but people do it. They break the rules.
I realized the shirt I put on this morning before I got here. I didn't realize I put my Patriot top on.
There's nothing wrong with it. You know what? A lot of Jet fans I talk, and I love the fans. Believe me, I love the fans. And matter of fact, fans probably treat me with more respect than my own Jets organization. And I've been at functions. And I'll bring up Tom Brady and the Patriots. And I've actually pulled for them in the Super Bowl. They're in our division. And fans would go irate. And I could never figure out why so many people hate Tom Brady. And I look at what he's accomplished in the Super Bowl. It's tremendous. You cannot just do that. It takes I don't even know how to say it. Just to get to the Super Bowl is hard. But the many times he's done it, that is a feat in itself. So I respect that. And I don't care what team you're playing. I even wear Giant, because I'm wearing blue. I'll put on a Giants hat. And my fans will get mad at me for doing that. But me, I love everybody, and I'll rib the Giant players because I have friends on. I used to rib Bruce Harper because he lived in Jersey. He probably had more Giant friendships out there, and he played for the Jets. He had the reverse commute going out to Long Island and to Jersey, and I never could figure that out. But I just love everybody. It doesn't matter to me. I just watch the game. I don't harbor any ill will. This game is so fleeting. I even look at Cam Newton, who was one of the stellar quarterbacks when he went to the Super Bowl against Peyton Manning, and then you look at he's doing TV now, but what happened to him? You don't get that many opportunities, and there's some people that never even been to a playoff and are just Hall of Fame players. It's just so hard and difficult. So I respect anyone who's played this game, who's had success. There's no jealousies, and it's unfortunate you have people who are like that. They fight and argue who's the best, this, that, and other thing. But I just respect people and individuals for their sport and what they do.
Yeah, and I still got some more to cover. If you're okay going over, I'm going to go over a little bit.
Hey, I'm yours.
We won't go too much longer, but there's a few things I still wanted to cover. We talked about Walt Michaels, and he gets fired, and Joe Walton comes in. What was your relationship with those two guys, and what was the differences between the two?
They were both different, and I will say this on a pro level, and this is a shame. Even the owner, Leon Hess at the time, he didn't know the players. You could see if he come into the locker room, he wouldn't come in a lot, but he would look at the name tags. He wouldn't know if you passed him on the street. And I think that's some true in respects, even with Woody Johnson right now. He wouldn't know all of his players or whatever. And that's just the business part of it. Coaches. Walt Michaels, I didn't really get to know him till after he retired. He was this gruff. He came off like not being so sharp for as I was concerned. And even when he talked, he was just a lunch pill kind of guy. but he didn't have this relationship. But we got to know each other after he retired, talking about certain things. He wanted to hear from the guys. I could call him. We could talk. I sat at a game one time, and we were talking about football, and you find out he's sharper than you've given him credit for. Why they can't have that relationship with you as a player, as a friend. Some people think you have to be separate. I don't believe that. You can still coach a person, be their friends, but get what you need to get out of it. There's business is business. You separate those things. Walton was a different type of guy. He fired me up when he first got there. I watched him change as a person when he became head coach, and things that he was able to do, he couldn't do anymore. And the things that he brought to the table, he could have done more than that, but he tried to do too much and just changed as a person. And I even told him he should get to know the players instead of going by what a trainer or somebody in the organization said about them. Get to know your players, and then you can make that evaluation. But coaches make a mistake by not knowing their players to get the best out of them. And it's a two-way street. There's only been one coach that, or a coordinator, when I came to the Jets, would even listen to you and maybe uh you know take something that you made a suggestion of and maybe use it. Most coaches are one way, tunnel vision, this way. And to me, a good coach has to adapt not only to your system, but adapt to the system around the players that do what they do best. And it's hard to really do that. But I never understood why people couldn't develop the close relationship where you would want to run to a wall for the coach. So Walt, like I said, was this gruff person, and he rubbed me the wrong way. He drafted me, but I didn't get to know him till after his career, and he just felt he had to be a certain way. I don't believe you have to be that way. You can still have a relationship and still have that same gruff way about it to get whatever you want out of players. I mean, if you look at Bill Parcells and you look at Lawrence Taylor, he gets on your case and he got the best out of him, and you might even hate the guy, but you don't get to really know the kind of person he was. I loved Joe Walt when he first got there, but he became a person where I couldn't care less. His speeches, it was a turnoff. And I remember him coming back to the back of the plane. He spoke to Al Toon, and I'm playing just like you would think he would said something to me, didn't say a word. And a lot of people lost a lot of respect for him. If you talk to a lot of players like Greg Buttle, they hate Joe Walton. But I could never be like that, And I talked to Joe before he passed away. And I remember when I was retired and watching what he went through with the fans and Joe Must Go and the things that they were saying and doing, and watching his wife being there to support him. And I remember crying. No, I don't care how bad you are, what type of person you are, nobody should be subjected to that kind of hate and pain. Right. And you feel for people, even though he I felt got disrespectful, and a lot of guys got turned off, but that's just part of the business. And it's unfortunate that people do change, and you just can't come together as a team and try to understand each other. And that's the one thing that I wish even our teammates, I always thought we had so many cliques. Guys were jealous of one another. There was racism on our team. Guys were separate, black and white. I didn't even trust a lot of my brothers. They would say things. They were jealous over women saying this, that about you. Guys, I mean, Glecko, Marty, Gasson, big conflict, So I remember Joe Walton addressing the party. How do you have a party and not invite everybody? Guys would have parties and would invite everybody. We weren't together as a team like that. And I never understood that. And I always thought, I wonder if we were like a real family that we preached, what would it really be like,
I think you answered the question I was just going to ask you was what held this team back? Because with all the talent, I think you just answered it, right?
Hey, I still remember we would have a Thanksgiving dinner, right? And Leon Hess would come and give a little talk. And I'll never forget this on Thanksgiving. We weren't having a great year. And he got up and said, well, the coach will be here, but some of you players won't be here. And this is Thanksgiving. And this is the business aspect of it, where you say to yourself, this is just insane how people are thinking. To me, we play a sport, right? This is a game, but it's still a game. There's more to life than just this. Yeah. And there's a way you have to me, carry yourself or at least project yourself to say and do the right thing, or at least try to. But when you make it something that it is not, and it make people feel bad, and especially on Thanksgiving Day, I just always had a hard time with that. I had a hard time when we had to practice on Thanksgiving, New Year's, Christmas, and
Yeah.
people celebrating. You want to be with your family, and this is business, but this is the business part of it that people don't know that you have to deal with. And we're human. We're no different than you, and we have lives, but it's just a different mentality of what you have to do to try to be successful in this sport. And people don't realize how hard it really is. But we're people too, and we have the same things we're going through, dealing with families, this and that. But you don't know how difficult it is, and the things that you have to sacrifice to be successful in this game. And and some people can't even appreciate that. But when you have ownership and coaches who cannot understand that and bring you together, how do you become successful? I don't know. And it's just so hard. And even if you had everything, it's hard to do it when you have everything. So that's why I couldn't coach. I couldn't be an owner. I wouldn't even know how to, I know my personality, what I would like, and I would try to project that to my team. But is that going to make you successful? That's a big question.
Yeah. I mean, kind of two different areas, right? You got the Michaels and Todd era, we'll say, and then we got Walton and O'Brien, and but great players in each group. There sounds like there's some regret there that this team didn't win at least one Super Bowl and maybe more. There was talent there to do it.
Oh, we definitely had the talent, and I don't know what to say about that too, because there are certain things that have to take place, and and I really have to research it with other players and teams. How did they get there? And I know that there was a time where we was at 10-1.
I was bring that up.
If we would have stayed healthy, and most of it was on defense.
Yeah.
And this is where it is. It's a team. It's just not one player. It's people together. When we were clicking, defense was getting turnover. We were getting field position. Offense, I had 12 touchdowns, and we had 5 games go. I'm thinking I'm going to break all these records. We get all these injuries. Things start happening. Next thing we know, we're not getting the field position. Guys are getting hurt, and we just stopped throwing. I didn't even catch another touchdon after that, And the record at that time was 14.
You had 12.
I got 12.
Yeah.
And the record was only, the NFL record was 18. I'm getting this. And all of a sudden we just stopped throwing. I was so disappointed. And I never felt, and people don't really know this, I'm a receiver. I was probably the most frustrated receiver in the league. And when I know guys that I played against in college, and you see these guys catching 70, 80, 100 balls, even my partner, Al Toon, getting 90, 100 balls, and I'm getting like 40, and I was just so frustrated. And I was not jealous and mad that they were getting the ball, but I'm like, how do you not get me the football? I was so frustrated. I'm still frustrated to this day that I couldn't get the yardage and all the records and the things that you want to accomplish in your life. And a lot of that for me is too a disappointment, just staying healthy and being hurt, because the games that I did miss, I could have tacked on those yards, but I still didn't get the opportunities that more players were getting and at my position that I should have gotten. But again, that system, that's coaching, and that's who they want to feature. There's a lot of politics in that also.
Oh, wait, sure.
Bring you in, and that's a part of it. And if you don't have a coach that really sees you as one-dimensional, and I hated that because they always saw me as a deep threat, and I could run in a slot, inside, outside, whatever. But a coach has to see that in you and put you in those positions. Unfortunately, if you don't have that, you're not going to get those opportunities. And that was most of my career. It was like that.
Yeah, and one of the most remarkable numbers in your career, you averaged 19 yards a catch, and most of your career where you were averaging well over 20 in most of those your big seasons.
Yeah, and that bummed me out in the end of my career because it went down after that. And this is how my year went. I remember averaging 24.7. I think the year I went to the first Pro Bowl in '78. Yeah. And then getting back to the coach who took your suggestion, I remember telling Dan Henning, "Hey, Dan, I can do this. I don't care what defense they throw out. I can make the adjustment and read this and do this."
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. So he brought it to John Izzik, our coordinator, and they tried it out in practice. Next thing I know, they put it on the game plan. We go against Houston. I had 100 and something yards, and it's not even the second quarter. They from a suggestion I made, and boom, I get hurt and get knocked out for the season. And I was averaging 25.7, I
Yeah.
think, the game average. But that's how things happen. And I just wish I could have stayed healthy. But one thing I do know that the harder you train, and we don't have the facilities, we didn't have the training programs. Even I would have I wish I'd been sharp enough to hire somebody to train or whatever to be in the best shape because the harder you train and you have to do it, every year it gets a little bit tougher. You have to train that much harder to be better. My biggest thing is just if I could have stayed healthy to be more productive. But I always wanted to, though, let's say I would have been healthy and I had the physicality to do the certain things, would have featured me like I thought I should have been featured? And I'm not so sure they would have done that either.
You look at your numbers though when you're healthy, and the difference. The game was different then than it is today, right?
Absolutely.
We didn't have 15 guys catching 100 plus balls a year.
That's the thing. Dan Henney mentioned that too. It's just in Richard in my book how it's a different time and throwing the ball. Even Steve Barkowski mentioned that in college, the way things are.
Yeah. If you stayed healthy, there's no doubt in my mind you'd be a Hall of Famer, and I think Al Toon would be a Hall of Famer if he'd stayed healthy as well without the concussion.
I was just with him. He has a place here in Scottsdale, and even though he's lives full time in Wisconsin, he's always busy. But we were together just recently, and we did this appearance together. We were at the game, our last Legends weekend, and it's so good to see guys that. Because you don't know how much time we really have, and I try to get guys to come to these Legends weekends and try to get together because you don't know when we're going to see each other, and we all have certain things that have happened in our lives and that kind of help each other. Matter of fact, Al's daughter had gotten killed by her husband, and then he shot himself, and he was going through a difficult time. But you know what? My mom was dying, and she ended up dying. And he texted me, called me, and I'm calling him to text me. And my family didn't even want me to tell me about what happened with Al to upset me. And here he is. We're both consoling each other. But that's the kind of person he is, and you just want to help each other. And those are the personal things that people don't know that even during the course of a year. We go through personal tragedies or things that are happening in life, just like any individual. And then you got to play this game that people see on TV, but they don't know some of the things that have gone on, even with the team and things that you have to do or playing injured or whatever it may be. But they look at this game, he should have caught that ball. But they don't know that, hey, you couldn't even see the ball or the catch you made. I don't even know how I caught that ball my damn self, but it's so much involved with it, and that's what the public, they don't know and see, but you're supposed to put this product on our film, but there's just more to it, and it's just about life, and that's what I'm about too. It's just a game at the end of the day.
Were you and Al back in the day, because you had talked, Al came in and Al became you were getting to the backside of your career at the beginning of his career. Were you guys good back then too, when he became more of a focus than you were?
Yeah, but everything was good. They just changed it. Matter of fact, I used to play the split end position that Al played, and they felt I knew more, so they switched me to the flanker position to more since I knew the overall offense. At least that's what their excuse was. And me, they featured him as the receiver that would catch more balls, a short guy, and I was a long ball. And I used to be banter with him back and forth. Man, just give me the opportunities that you're getting, man. You give me half the balls that you're getting, I'll get more yards. But I'd always get the yardage and more touchdowns, and I just never had the opportunity. So I used to rib him, but I wasn't jealous. I was happy for him. But I just wish I had the same opportunities. He just got more opportunities. But if you look at his career, and he was a big guy. He could put himself in certain positions where he got hung up a lot. And I see him take some hits where I thank God that I didn't get hit like that. A couple times he got hit. I remember he got knocked out against Cleveland. They knocked his tooth out, and he had a concussion. He got knocked out. We were playing in this Houston, and they were the House of Pain, and they came in. Al got knocked out of that game. Well, I ended up being the featured guy. He had MVP, had like 3 touchdowns, and I was so pissed. Like, can I prove to you guys that I can do this? And they still stopped throwing to me. And that's back when I was on the latter part of my career. And I just talked to Lynn Berman the other day. I have a lot of respect for him. And I didn't know we were like the same age. And I was at Joe Namath's
Len Berman?
tournament, golf tournament. Just what's that?
Len Berman. I would thought he was older than you, Len Berman. No?
I thought so too. And we're the same age. But he said to me, Wesley, you came in fast and you left fast. But he's a big Jet fan. I didn't even know that. But I just found out we were like the same age, and we're all getting older. But I always respect him, and he lived up in Connecticut, and we've seen each other cross paths. But I didn't know he was such an avid fan or whatever. But I just found out just here we're like the same age or whatever. But just have a lot of respect for him, and it's just. I don't know. It's like I said, life is fleeting. You meet a lot of good people. I've had a lot more respect from people outside the organization, what you did, and I just wish I had that from the organization itself. And Altoon, I always had respect for him. I have respect for all of my teammates, and I just wish we weren't, let's say, in this competition, like with Gassino and Glecko and Marty Lyons, and I just don't know. How could you not play together and just love one another instead of having this animosity or jealous because somebody's doing this, that, and other thing?
Was Gassino, was he a selfish guy? Was he one of those guys that might have been a problem?
Well, see, everybody has their different personality. And I know Marty in this recent, actually it's coming out today, this 30
I was
piece.
going to ask you about the Favre Gassino
yeah. And Gassino would sit back with us. He would say the black guys treat him better than the white guys. And he would cry the blues, but he was self-centered. He only worried about himself. And I would say that, but he was still a great athlete. I loved Mark Gassino. I loved all my teammates. I loved everybody. I didn't like the certain behaviors that they all projected to be. And every one of these players, they could say something about another player, but you put them in the same light, they would be in the same room where I could say the same things about them. And that's the thing. But what I'm talking about, though, as a team and as a sack exchange, you would think you guys would be together, but when you guys hate each other, that's not a team. Yeah. And there might have been reasons for that. You can say this person was this person that. I never liked certain things about what maybe Mark did or what Marty did. I can say that about it, but they're still my teammates. We're here together to play. It shouldn't matter what you do. We do what we need to do together as a team. But you get into these personal things that were going on. That's craziness. But that's what I was so disappointed about, because I figured when you got to a pro level, this stuff would go out the window. It was even worse, I mean, I wasn't used to this. I came in to New York, and I'm thinking, we're on a pro level. There's no prejudice. We're all one team. We're going to love one another. We preach it as a family. There were guys that hated each other. They would have parties and wouldn't invite everybody. We weren't together as a team. And I'm talking about black guys that would say certain things about me out of jealousy. And I'm like, these are supposed to be my teammates. It was like that with the team. And we preach this whole family. And guys on our team would say we had each other's back, but it was not like that. We were a team. And I was talking to Gary Cassio when we were doing the book. I was talking about that very thing. I always wondered what it would be like if we really cared about you, that we went to a wall for each other, we hung out together, would we be better? But he wrote a book with the Oakland A's, and they hate each other, but they won championships. So I don't know what the formula is, but I just thought it would be different on a pro level with my teammates. And people come from different backgrounds. I certainly came from a different background, and I dealt with prejudice, but it didn't make me prejudiced. You may have been taught that, but how do I not love a person because he's different? He's a human being like me. So how do I not like somebody?
Yeah.
So
the altercation of the video altercation with Favre and Gassino, do you think
crazy?
Was it
Mark is. People don't really know. Mark is not well, number one.
He didn't seem well in that video, yes.
Well, if you look at him and stuff, he's got Parkinson's. I mean, he'll tell you he's got CTE, dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. And I know he has the Parkinson's. He's had trouble walking. He was really shaking the last time we were with him. And I love him to death. but when he talks, even when we got the Ring of Honor together, we did Don LaGreca and Greg Buttle before the game and like the post game show, and they were talking about the sack thing,
Yeah.
with Barb at the time. Well, Mark went on a tangent, and nobody knew what he was even talking about. But Mark has some issues, and whether some of this stuff. I don't know if it's kind of staged because they're trying to promote this show now that's coming out.
Probably.
And I heard he has a book coming out. There's a rift between Glecko, Marty, and Gasso. There always has been, and I never could understand that dynamic, even with Abdul. And I was talking to Abdul's wife because Abdul always took the high road, and I was always especially with prejudice. How did he deal with it? But see, nobody messed with Abdul. Abdul was a bad brother.
He's always the last guy to get mentioned in that group.
He could get doubled and triple teamed, and it created a whole window for Mark and Glecko.
Yeah.
It's just uncanny, but he never got the respect he was really due. But nobody messed with Abdul. But the thing is, I never understood the dynamic with all of them, with the jealousy or whatever things were going on. How do you play together as a team? And they didn't like what the sack dance, and Mark always had he had all the ability in the world, but his downfall, as you might say, he wouldn't stop the run, or he's always trying to sack the quarterback, and he'd become one-dimensional in that respect. But that was always. But there were guys that would freelance, and Bobby Jackson would tell you there are times where Greg Butler might do something on his own, but when you are so caught up in maybe the dance and like what people do, and you don't even get the defense because you're so caught up doing other thing, and you didn't even get the defensive call, you kind of hurt the team. So I could see people getting mad, but to me, coaches should have nipped that in the bud. You know what I mean? You got to do your job. So if they let you get away with certain things, then hey, that's what it is. But still, I still have respect for my teammate, regardless of personality. And now you see these guys doing these antics, celebrating. You got the whole team in front of the TV. That's them, and I have no problem with that. Some of it's entertaining. Some of them, I don't get it myself, but that's not my personality. But it didn't bother me. Mark could do his thing or whatever. What bothered me is us as teammates couldn't together as a team, even blacks and white, having certain cliques, certain factions over here. Me, I came from Berkeley. I was, like I said, a black hippie. I didn't care about black and white. I loved everybody, and I didn't care what anybody thought. And it was my teammates. I didn't have to hang with them. I just hung with them on the field. I'm going to do my job, whatever. But I didn't have to hang with them. If they weren't my type, they weren't my type. But I never thought it was going to be like that on a pro level.
Well, that's a common theme for sure. Before I let you go, let me get to some of these comments that I didn't get to while we're going through here. Rick Sherlock, who's a big Minnesota fan, he wants to know if you had any interaction with Joe Cap while he was.
Oh my God! I wish I had. I forgot what appearance we did, and I've always heard of Joe Cap because I followed Minnesota as a player when I was a youngster, and then he became the coach at Cal. Just a great guy. And I just wish I would have had more interaction with him. And when you're thinking about Minnesota, those purple people eaters, and God, I mean, one of my, I can't even think of all the names of different people. Alan Page, and Chuck Foreman was a running back there, number 44, who's a good friend of mine to this day.
Great.
Well, the thing is, I never met him, saw him play, and we did a couple appearances together. There was a Hall of Fame dinner they used to have, and he came in a couple of times. And I remember he kept saying, "You got to come to Minneapolis. Got to come to Minneapolis. You'll love it. You'll love it." And finally, I went on a business trip, and we hooked up, and it was one of the best trips I've ever had. And I got to know him a little bit, and he would come into New York once in a while, and I talked to him every now and then. Here, I never played with him, just know a little bit about him. I had one of my good friends who patted him spin move because of Foreman. But just a good dude. And like when we met, we were just like brothers, And that's the funny thing about the NFL and this brotherhood. And I was at a meeting last night, but I was with Andre Reed in Wyoming at this charity event. And we had never really seen each other. Now, he went to Kutztown, where Bruce Harper went to school, and I know of him. I know some other personal friends who are personal friends, and we've maybe hooked up together at like a Hall of Fame thing or something, but we don't really know each other. This is the first time we sat at the table just talking,
Yeah.
and it's funny. He'll be building me up with my wife and how much respect you have. But here's a guy that's a Hall of Famer, and we played together, who's giving you all this respect. And here it is. I don't know him, but it's like we've known each other for years, and that's kind of, I don't know how to explain it. In the NFL with the brotherhood, you have this mutual respect for people, but when you get to know them personally and actually see them, it's like you've known them forever, and you never, like I was with Mark Clayton, the Miami Dolphins. Now we were rivals. I just was with him at Joe Namath's tournament. We were talking. He was. I'd contact him on some players on the book I'm doing, and we could talk, even though we never hung out together. We have mutual friends, but it's like you've known each other for years, and that's what's just unique about the NFL. You may not even know persons personally. I mean, I remember the first time I met Walter Payton. He picks me up and spins me around. I mean, I don't even know this guy, and he's active. And now I know why they call him Sweetness. And it's like you've known him for years. Joe Namath the same way. I've never played with him. I can call him up. I called him up when I was getting my knee replaced last year, just to because he took him a while to get his knees replaced for a long time. And he's the best thing he's ever done. And I had to call him just to give me some confidence of going in to get this thing done, because you never know what could happen. I know Joe Glecko went in this past year and he ended up getting sepsis, infections, and gout, and it's been touch and go. It's been crazy over, just getting the surgery. A lot of things that can come about, with surgeries, but we're all going through some things. That's why I'm appreciating life, and I'm hoping I get to 70 this May, and I'm counting my blessings at this point.
It's interesting. Some of the guys you mentioned, I've got like a 6 degree of separation with a lot of guys, because I've had a fellow alumni. You didn't play with him; he was before you. Ed White, who played with the Vikings, has been
absolutely, and I know of him. And I never met him, but I know of him.
Yeah. Chuck Foreman's been on the show with me. Matt Robinson, you mentioned earlier, he's been on the show with me.
And you mentioned Mr. Sample too. I met him out in Connecticut. We got honored for something. We were on a dais together, and I've seen him a couple times. He's funny, man.
He spoke very highly of you.
Yeah, as well. I love him.
And just to show you the reach we have here, so we've got people out in California. Danny Fuller said hi before. Michael Gott's over in the UK. He's one of our big followers. So,
well, I'll tell you what, we have a Jets following in the UK also, and I have a good friend of mine who's a huge Jet fan, Frank West, and another lady, Liz Mueller, who's made jersey for my wife and I, and they're just good people. But there's a fan base in Germany, and they're just sweet people. Matter of fact, one guy over in the UK just recently had a friend of mine. He wanted to reach out. He was going to be running in this event for charity, and he has a Kenny O'Brien tattoo. So my friend Frank had called me. You think you can talk to Kenny O'Brien? I said, it's funny you mentioned it. I just got off the phone with him, and my wife just booked him for her parents. So I asked him, hey, there's a guy over in the UK. He has a tattoo of you. And even my friend Frank said, I love you. He wears my jersey. I'm not getting a tattoo of you, But Kenny was flattered, sent a video to him, and I put it on Facebook the other day. And that's what I like. There are some guys out there that are they won't even give you a time of day, but some people will take the time to do certain things, because I appreciate the fans who have given me more respect, like I said, than the Jets organization has. And here this guy has this tattoo of Kenny, and they're just real avid fans. And Kenny was good enough to do a video to give him a shout out for this charity run he was involved in. And it was just a nice thing just to bring people together,
Yeah. And Michael added a couple of nice comments about, togetherness that you talked about before, which we brought up. Locked in Sports Zone, we already touched on the Gastineau situation, but we appreciate you popping in. Robert Fuller from the Sports Scope show, he says great stuff, very motivational, and you have been very motivational in a lot of things you brought here. Here's a good question from Michael, actually. Do you have any thoughts on Bill Belichick's moving to college and wanting to bring, and I have an opinion here myself,
well,
the NFL pro style setup? I say it's already there in a lot of cases, the pro style setup in college programs already. Look at Georgia and places like that.
Well, I think he's got to sell himself, and I was listening to what he had to say, which is kind of it's hard when you've been where he's been to the top, he's done it all.
Yep.
And now he's going back to a level where I wouldn't say it's a step down, but I was listening to what he had said, how this is going to be, a program that's going to get guys prepared for the NFL, even after football, all these things. But I think that's what most programs do anyway. He just has a bigger name to do those type of things or whatever. But I was just curious the real reason why he would want to fall back to a college level than going to a pro team, but maybe nobody's interested. I don't know why that dynamic is, but most schools, and now with the portals and moving around, it's just a whole different element. I don't even know how he's going to do with the recruiting process, this and that, but he's selling his program because he'll be preparing you for the NFL. Most, if you look at it, most colleges, it's just a farm team for the NFL. That's why guys are really getting scholarship and going to school for to prepare you for that. How well you do that is a question, and he obviously he can bring that element to the table because of his success and all of that. He also has to have the surrounding cast because Bill Belichick, and I'd have to say any coach who's very successful, it's not just about him. It's the people you surround yourselves with. And I remember listening to earlier Lawrence Taylor saying when Bill Belichick got hired, he was just a little sort of gopher special teams coach, and he was pissed that he was even being thrust in this situation. And Bill tried to make it clear to him, he's the one that's been drawing up the defenses for you. So you just have to have the caliber of coaches to get this thing done.
Yeah.
I just know he's trying to sell this program. It's going to be an NFL program. I think every school is there for it. But if you have the mindset, I want to go to the NFL and not focus on that, hey, what are you going to do after that? You know, most college players should be focused on the fact, okay, you have the desire to go, but what do you do if that doesn't happen or you get hurt? You got to move on from there. So you got to be prepared to do that. But most schools, it's just a farm league for the NFL, as far as I'm concerned. It's just how well you do it. And I have no problem with him doing that. I just look at it's kind of a step down from being at the level he's been to me, you know.
It is an interesting career move for sure. We'll see.
Yeah.
Rick talks about, you mentioned earlier you enjoyed partying at least at one point in your life. Who's your craziest teammates? I'm guessing in college, Chuck Muncie would have been one of those guys.
Yeah, but I didn't think with Chuck, he was doing his own thing, and I was still younger, so I didn't get a chance to hang with him like I wanted to, and it probably would have been the worst thing, you know, because the times I did hang with him, I don't know if I can hang this tough, you know. But I just loved him. He was like my idol, and I kind of patterned myself out there with him, you know what I mean? But I didn't have any one person I really like hung up with, but I admired him. I looked up because he was like my idol. I mean, this guy, I'll never forget. They lined us all up, all the fast guys, right, for the 40-yard dash. I'll never forget that. And I kind of stumbled coming out of the blocks, you know, and Chuck Muncie was right there. And I'm looking at this guy weighing 230 pounds and running like that. I was so impressed. But he was big, he's fat, and he had these glasses he used to wear, and he partied a lot. And being at Berkeley, you know, you kind of learn how to do that. And I was like an all-American kid. I didn't do any of that until I got to college. But I always just liked him as a person. And but I kind of did my own thing. And if there's one guy I hung with, he was a fullback, Thomas Newton. He's up in Rochester now, and we're all having some issues. And I was getting on his case because I called him several times, and he's never called me back. But I was probably more crazier with myself more than being with somebody else, you know. I just did my own thing.
Great point. Michael also talks about winning a Super Bowl. We talked a little bit about this. Why it's taking the Jets so long to get back? It's been 50, I don't know, I can't do the math, 56 years almost.
Yeah.
We talked about a lot of those reasons. Sonny Werblin, Leon Hess and Woody Johnson have owned the team for the majority of that gap. Yeah. And I think that stuff happens from the top down in the culture.
Well, you hit it right on the head, and I said that. And you know, I think any owner gets mad when you start to focus on them. And I look at what's happening at Dallas and some of the comments that come out. But you as an owner, you know, I'm not saying you have to be hands-on, but you have to really do your research and figure out who to hire, and who's going to be a best fit for the program, and that's getting the right people in there. I
Yeah.
thought at one time Mike McCarthy would have been that guy for the Jets even, but he's gone down to Dallas, and it just doesn't happen. Everybody thought just because we're getting Aaron Rodgers and some things, and we've got some athletes, and it can be done. But you look at what has happened. Woody Johnson is a part of that. And whether he's hands on, I don't know what he's going to be doing with Trump with that whole situation. But you have to get some people that know what they're doing, and they've had a hard time. And but you just can't figure it all out. And I know Rex Ryan was being vying for it. And I remember Rex Ryan, he left the Jets, went down to Buffalo, and he took their defense, which was a great defense,
Terrible.
and they regress. And nobody said something about that. So, what is the ingredient that keeps people together? I remember Dan Henry, who I love. He went down to Atlanta, became head coach. There was an all-pro player, Mike Ken, who hated him. So I don't know what happens in that dynamic, but I know it starts at the top. Leon Hetz could have hired somebody before he got Parcells. He could have hired somebody way before Parcells. And, he hired guys like Richie Kotite and certain things, or he heard it from his relative or whatever. They really don't know. And I don't know behind the scenes how much knowledge they know. But you have to get somebody, whether it's a general manager or somebody that knows, and it's hard to even get those guys and put everything together, because it's not only the head coach, it's the coaches that surround you that make you. You can replace a coach, but if he's not qualified to coach these people, it's not going to get done. Just because you've been there, let's say, let's say you had success. Wesley comes in, he had Dan Henney. And that happened with Dan Henry. He wanted more security or a bigger contract. They didn't want to pay him, so they let him go. We get a special teams coach as a wide receiver, Larry Pasquale, and it wasn't a good fit, and he wasn't experienced, and we regress. So you have to have the point of being, you have to have people qualified, and that starts with Woody. You don't have the qualifications to really put this together. I don't know why these other businesses also. But you have to find somebody that has that ability.
Yeah.
And it's hard enough when you get those guys in there. And everybody thought Joe Douglas was the man with everything, but you look at his record, it's been horrible. They've had several GMs that come in there. You just have to get the right person. So I don't know what direction they're going in, but they're certainly going to clean house now. And Aaron Rodgers, he's got a big question mark. I think he can still play, but it's not just one guy that's going to do it.
You're following the Jets as you do. Can they sell that to the fans, running this back again with Rodgers and the same crew? I don't know that they can.
They may not be able to, but I think you can, providing you get the right people in there. Now, I don't know Rodgers' dynamic, and just so you know, I didn't know football. I go up to the Hall of Fame at Cal to show my kids I'm in the Hall of Fame. I'm like, I didn't know Aaron Rodgers went to Cal, but. He seems to be able to still throw the ball.
Yeah.
Nathaniel Hackett was his father was Paul Hackett.
Yeah.
Paul Hackett was my coach in college, who was like a father to me, just like a Dan Henning. But he changed as a person, and there were some dynamics with him and with other teams and other coaches problems.
Yeah.
Nathaniel hadn't really proved to me. I got a picture I put in for good luck.
I didn't know it was Paul Hackett's son, actually. Thank you.
I had him on my chest as a baby. I used to babysit his kids in college, and my ex girlfriend that I had in college, we used to babysit, and he was like a father to me. I remember going to see Paul when he was at San Francisco. He changed as a person, and I'd heard all these other things. Him and Herman Edwards came into the Jets, and they were changed people. And it's like I didn't even know them, and I thought we'd develop a little bit of a relationship, but we didn't. And that's personality wise. Yeah. And I'm only likening that to Nathaniel with the coaching part of it, because to me, Aaron Rodgers, they brought him in. I don't know what their dynamic was, but I wasn't impressed down in Denver. Some things, even with the Jets, with the system and things are going on. They demoted him. Who knows what's going on with his organization? But that is within Woody's realm of control or whatever coaching, and the firing of Saleh and the Joe Douglases. What is going on? And elevating people. maybe those guys that are there are just not qualified. So that's the thing they have to figure out. And that's what Woody's going to have to figure out. And it does start at the top. And so if you doesn't get that done, how are you expect to win? And it's just hard enough to do it with good people. And like I thought, like McCarthy would have been a shoo-in. I thought the Jets should have hired him, but look at the problems he's having down there in Dallas,
You never know.
And then when you have an owner that says Derrick Henry couldn't fit into their office, that's got to be crazy, So who knows?
You said a couple of times it's right. It's everybody being in the right place at the right moment, and that's it's not an exact science, right?
I just wish everybody could be on the same page doing it together. Because and I'm in contact with one of the beat writers, Rich Semina, and I'll get tidbits from him and the team, and they just like he said, Garrett was saying they just got this losing gene. I don't know. Everybody's confused right now. They don't know what direction they're going in, and it's got to be when you got guys like Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner. And then you're regressing instead of improving or getting the opportunities. That's coaching, as far as I'm concerned. So, you can pick out a multitude of things, but the thing is, you're all in it together. It's a team. It's an organization. And the Jets are a big negative right now. So they have a lot of decisions to make. I don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, but I wouldn't count Rodgers out. Yeah. But they're going to have to clean house and do a lot of different things, and they're just going to move in a different direction. But to be honest with you, the way the league is with free agency, it's all different every year. That's why you got to take advantage of it when you're on a roll to win. You don't know when this time is ever going to come back again. That's why you got to do it while you can.
100%. You saw that in your career. Wesley, I know I've taken you a lot longer than I said I would today, so I appreciate your patience, and you've been awesome. As a Patriot fan, I can tell you you're a guy that I respected a lot. And I know that if you had not had the injuries you had, you would be in the NFL Hall of Fame today.
Well, I appreciate that. I really appreciate it. And I do like the Patriots, but look at their struggles right now. So I feel for you, brother. Not as bad as the Jets, but
we said forever during that 20-year run, because we were bad before. For most of the time, we said we're going to enjoy this because someday we'll be like everybody else. And now
that's right. That's right. Every year is different. That's all I can tell you.
We had a blast. Stay with me 1 second so I can say a proper
Absolutely.
Goodbye. I really thank Wesley for his time today. Check Wesley out. When we get information on his book, we'll make sure we share it with all you guys. We'll be sharing it to all the Jet groups that we belong to, the NFL groups we belong to. Enjoy this. Hope you enjoyed this interview, and you guys have a great week. And we'll see you next week with Jim Graziano, former South Carolina Gamecock. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.